Hello and welcome to another video. So this is a very unconventional deck. I'll say that much first. This is running a very odd set of cards, to be honest with you. Valkyrie of Chaos, a card that you rarely ever get to see, but I'm glad I at least get to give it a go. After all, the animated one is really nice, and I have 3 of it, so nice to give that a swing. Valkyrie of Order, another card you don't get to see a lot of, but that I also have an animated of that is interesting. When I found this deck list, I was like, looks like a deck that has some potential. It might be an interesting one to play, so why not give it a go? And then we have Regenerate Spirit, Enhance 8, then Reanimate 5, so it gives you the double reanimate thing. Didn't get to use this card much. A couple of games I did use it in, I believe I lost anyway. But Voices of Resentment, much better card when it comes to being of use, because you can use it of course with the Atomy plays, which you'll see are pretty reasonable. Deathly Tyrant just gives you a nice bit of reach, and then the rest is somewhere between mid-range and Reanimate, with Sidwins and a little bit of variation with the Eternity Hunter version, and just top end cards. So it's an interesting deck. I don't have much to say about it because I haven't done enough testing or seen enough people play this deck to really know what I was getting into when I started playing it. The games I did play felt very clunky to start with, but the more I've played with the deck, the more comfortable it feels, and outside of having to high roll Lord Atomy, the rest of the deck actually doesn't feel too bad. I don't know about Valkyrie of Order. I mean, it's an okay card, but it's awkward. Valkyrie of Chaos though definitely does its job, being both a ward and rush. It works well as the offense and defense. Of course, that is random, but in the case of ward and rush, it can really be pretty interchangeable unless you desperately need rush to win the game. But we're going to get right into the deck and check it out. So the games I've got for this video, which were the best couple of games this deck got, after all it is a pretty unconventional deck, are both against Rune. How those Rune's crafts vary, it's up to you to decide, but honestly, it was one of the few classes that I had a pretty reasonable matchup against. Of course, aggro, unless you draw the absolute nuts of a draw, is really hard to deal with, but overall, it's definitely just one of those decks that you look at and you go, this probably won't work, but I might try it anyway, and that was the exact sentiment I had when I was looking at this deck. So this was the Beast Face Mage Rune, really pushing Earthright. Which, I mean, at least it makes the 2 decks that we're facing different, even though they are both Rune. Earth Rune and Normal Rune are so different. There's very little they have in common, for the most part, other than both being Rune classes. And then a Bone Chimera, that's a pretty decent play. I do love my Bone Chimeras. Missing the good old days of super powered Bone Chimeras. So, plenty of Earth Sigils there, getting played out. Not too much of a shock. If only we had Atomy now, it would have been perfect with that Skull Ring. It would present a massive board, but we do at least have our Bone Chimera. So we can go for 3 damage to face, and neither of these followers can easily deal with Ceres without an Evo, so that leaves me pretty comfortable until they play another follower. And Dwarven Alchemist isn't that follower. So the Evo on the zombie doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's the only decent way to deal with Ceres without losing a card. But my Ceres was mostly bait to begin with, so it makes sense. I was trying to draw them away from the potential of the Chimera. It's not Chimera. Yeah, it is. It's Bone Chimera. See, forgetfulness right there. There's so many Chimeras in this game now, you lose track of which one's a Chimera and which one's not a Chimera. There is Wizardess of Oz and Mutagenic Bolt. So we're going to get okay damage off these rats, actually. One of the few decks you don't want to turn the rats is something like Shadow, because obviously they can do massive damage like this with stuff like Demon Lord. Luckily they're 1 turn off, but for the most part I can just comfortably go for damage. I drop the Ceres with no issue. Next turn we have a perfect Demon Lord setup. Of course I do decide to get rid of 1 rat just so that Beast Face is gone, meaning they can't use it as an effective trade, which was really my only decent option. There is a Starseer's Telescope. Obviously their Oz didn't give them that great of an effect, otherwise they would have definitely played more. Fortunately for us, with the Skull Ring being procced there, we actually have Lethal. Demon Lord is going to give Rush to this 4, and now we can go face for 8. which secures us victory. And the next rune matchup, I believe this is a more traditional either D-Shift or Dari rune deck.
Let me take you to the underworld. Time to shine, Dari.
So it's definitely one of those decks that you kind of look at and you go, yeah, we know what you are, we know what to expect. My deck, on the other hand, you see cards come down and you go, Jesus, what is this random guy playing? But we do have our Skeleton Fighter and Dead Moon Disciple, both reasonable 1-drops. They're basically the same if played on 1. Dead Moon is slightly better just because its effect gives it a little bit of an edge, although I will admit that the Skeleton's buff is pretty good as well. So Valkyrie of Order as a 2-drop. When we have Atomy, we really just need to go balls to the wall and try and hit out as many followers as we can. Of course, this player is doing exceptionally well against this, and I don't have many options but to hopefully Demonate a Dead Moon Disciple for a decent draw. And they aren't the worst situation. So our opponent basically just passed their entire turn, obviously not having anything they wanted to use on 4, which is good for me, not so good for them, but I mean, if you don't have a play to make, then why play anything? So they go into their turn 5, and we see a Golem Assault. They either just drew that, or they just didn't have that to begin with. And there is the nice hit. Not so good for me, but nice for them. Skeleton Fighter. I mean, it's a skeleton and it fights, and thanks to Dead Moon's Disciple already being used on the 3-4 there, we could actually go face without having to worry. And I did end up leaving everything else up because I was trying to draw damage away from my face. Because we don't need to make it far to abuse something like Sidwin. And there is a Valkyrie of Chaos. Like I said, it is a pretty nice card. Although I would have preferred it to have been Rush, because then I could have went face for 4 damage, I will settle on the Ward. So far we're still alive, which means we're still in this game. We can set up our Underworld, which is going to block out any kind of major D-Shift plays, unless they have their whole hand absolutely stacked right now. And there's the Consecration for double draw, and that looks like all they've got for this turn. Not playing anything is a huge buff to me. And I do decide to go for the Deathly Tyrant play, getting ourselves 5 damage on the board along with our ward that will survive, or at least will allow us to survive, killing off whatever they want to play to attack it. And we've still got a nice Demon Lord setup. There is the first of many D-Shift, I am sure, and the Wind Blast. I'm guessing the Wind Blast didn't have enough damage, but then I think it did, so I don't know why you played in that order. And there is a Dimensional Shift Fate's Hand. So they're really pushing this with as many D-Shift as they can get their hands on at this point. Not good for me, but I mean, why not? And there is Unbodied Witch going for the Evo, of course, with its effect. Just throwing out Golem Assaults, or Guardian, sorry. And then going for the Instant Concede. They either misclicked, hit my face, or they wanted to strike the 5-5. Not sure what went on there. So even with that last game being a little weird because the opponent did decide to hit face when they were probably meant to have traded into the Deathly Tyrant, probably could have made a reasonable comeback with Demon Lord Ektar, Lord Atomy and so on, to the point where I would have been pretty comfortable at having a good chance at winning, and I'm guessing because they'd already used all their D-Shifts, they'd run out of any kind of burst damage, which means they would have been playing on the back end the entire game, and that's not where they obviously wanted to be, to just drag the match out. But if you did enjoy this video, you can find this deck list in the description below. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya!